in hurricane specialist and storm surge specialist Michael Lowry.
Who did get the answer right. You could bring up that remember when I tried to do math last week?
Now it's a he said, she said thing.
No, he definitely got it right.
The expert got it right.
Yeah, the hurricane expert. Yeah. Last week we had somebody who wrote in, he's like, could you please ask the hurricane expert?
Oh, no.
And so we were like, Michael Lowry, not a real hurricane expert, but he is. This guy's legit.
He is indeed. Why don't we go to him now, because we're going to talk about enough with that. No, I mean, the Pacific has a little bit of extra clouds and a little bit of spin.
It does, yeah. You know, you can sort of, if you squint, you can make out the rotation in the clouds. There is a broad area, very broad region of low pressure that's sitting just south of the Gulf of Tehuantepec and to the southeast of Acapulco. This is on the Pacific side of Mexico. Right now, it's not a fully formed tropical system, but there's enough turning here that the Hurricane Center is watching it for possible development. Though, I mean, I was saying this last week on the show, is that really the overall atmosphere right now across the Pacific and the Atlantic really doesn't favor big-time hurricane activity. So this one, we do think has some shot of developing, Mark, but I mean, the odds of it 50-50, and even then, I think most of our models are showing this being sort of a weaker in tropical depression, maybe a low-grade tropical storm.
This is the kind of setup where you can see kind of those brief spin-ups along old fronts that just get enough organization to have to be called something.
Yeah, and that's what we look for, especially on the Atlantic side. Now, this one, regardless of whether or not it develops, would actually bring some rainfall to Acapulco and Zihuatanejo, some of the resort communities. So if you're headed down there for a cruise, you know, it's not going to be a complete washout, but some additional showers and thunderstorms. Now, to Mark, to your point, a little more interesting when we go to the Atlantic side, because our models are hinting at an area of low pressure along a frontal zone sometime over the weekend there off the coast of the Carolinas. Now, this is the GFS rendition. This is the computer forecast of what the low pressure would look like into Sunday. Now, if you go to the European, night and day difference in terms of what it's showing. Actually showing almost like a nor'easter looking thing up there off the mid-Atlantic on Sunday. So big difference here in the computer models. Bottom line is we're going to have a front hanging down over the weekend. We'll keep an eye on it, but low odds for development, I think, at this point.
Maybe a spin on that front, maybe not at this point. Still something to watch.
Yeah.
I like that, a big question mark. But that'll keep us tuning in with Mr. Lowry through the week. Absolutely. Thanks, Michael, for explaining. Now, time for you to ask us your questions. Time to sound off. Social meteorologist Ryan Davidson working through those questions.
And those It's So Hots. We have a lot of It's So Hots.
That's fun.
We've got some good ones.
And different, so I can understand why.
Yeah.
Right. So the first one comes from Common Sense Parties that says, it's so hot, Alex Wilson is melting my TV.
I wore my dress that matches the hot temperatures. I wore this is my 90-degree dress.
It's your 90, 100-degree
like
dress.
when I stand in front of the hot map, I just kind of morph into it. So sorry about your TV, sir.
And this
you can
next
fill that to
tweet,
the Weather Channel or call it 1-900-KVETCH.
Yeah. KVETCH. The next tweet comes from somebody you may know, and you viewers at home may know too. Who doesn't like hot Atlanta? Rich says it's so hot that it's okay to throw shade on Twitter. Totally
I'll take any shade that I can get, Rich.
Right? He's been making fun of us all day.
Our producer right now, in case you're not in on the joke. He's behind the scenes sending tweets and throwing shade at us in the commercial breaks.
Always. All right, so the next one comes from TWC Jaden, who's not actually here, but likes Weather Channel. It says, if it was any hotter, all the bread in the store would be toast.
Oh,
that's pretty hot.
I guess at least it's a dry heat.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, let's go with that.
It's a good one. Keep them coming in. We want to hear your questions and your comments about It's So Hot That throughout the rest of the show.
Fun on this Monday, right? It's Monday. You know, I think we could all use a good smile to start the week.
All right, so we've had some amazing video in today.
Yes, please sign me up. Let's get into your video 6-pack and start in Montana, where a severe thunderstorm brought.
And you have the bark flying off of the tree, the tree limbs falling off. The tree looks like a bomb went off, all because of the water content inside this tree.
Yeah, so our guess is that this tree didn't have as much water in it, and that is what likely led to it not completely pulverizing and instead getting heated so much inside.
Although you can see all the way through. So some of the tree exploded out, but there was still enough heat to start a fire inside the tree, and now it just burned until it eventually fell.
Can you imagine seeing that?
I can't.
No.
But we want to show you some of what can happen with the difference in size, water vapor versus water drop. And so
because
we have
water vapor takes up much more room than water in its liquid state.
We have a little experiment going, and I'm just looking in there. Water the bottom of the can's boiling. And so what's happening here is that the water vapor is filling the can, pushing all the rest of the air out. And so we've got water vapor inside the can, and we're now, which we were awed by, is the rare case when you have probably some water vapor to crack open the tree so we can see into it, but enough warmth so that you actually had a fire start within the tree.
Mom, look what I did today. My parents must be so proud.
Science experiments in the lab.
Nailed it.
So maybe you learned something on the show today as well. Tweet us right now using the hashtag #WhatILearned. We'll try to read it on the air along with the home team.
Oh, yeah, no. Congratulations, Dr. Forbes.
Way to go, Pens.
Yeah. I know all the Pens fans are going to be writing in about that, but apparently your tweets are going to be too late to make this segment. So let's go to see what you've already talked about with Ryan Davidson
Maybe not, Ryan.
behind the bar.
It's pretty quick from what I...
It depends.
I've heard that about him.
The first one comes from David. Does the dew point of humidity have to be high in order for it to storm? Mark, I'm ignoring you.
I understand. Most people do. So does the dew point and the humidity tied together have to be high for there to be a storm? I mean, there has to be enough moisture for there to be clouds and then rain. If the dew points are too low, you won't ever get that stuff to form.
Super high, but it certainly helps.
Extraordinarily high. If you've got cold, it can have wintertime thunderstorms, and with cold air aloft and relatively low compared to summertime, relatively low dew point.
So the relative humidity still matters in that case.
All right. So the next one is from Krenning King of Roast.
Nice name.
He says, how hot is it supposed to get in St. Louis this week? Also, is it supposed to storm?
Do you want to start with the heat part of it?
We're moving on to our It's So Hot.
Okay.
All right.
But first, from the lab says activate fire suppression protocols.
Luckily, I remember to turn the hot plate off the weather lab, so you should be fine. No open flames.
All right, so the next one comes from Laura, and Laura says, it's so hot that chickens are laying hard-boiled eggs. Honorary Islander says, it's so hot, your dog will ask you for flip-flops to go out for a walk.
Oh, actually true, though, right? You work with pets all the time, and it can be too hot
for their paws. So if you're walking the dogs, make sure you're walking them like off the sidewalk so they can walk in the grass. Because it is too hot. It can burn their little paw pads.
If you can't put your hand on the pavement for like 5 seconds, then they can't put their paws on the pavement either.
Get them little doggy flip-flops.
Yeah,
doggy booties, but then they walk like this.
All right, so one of the last ones we have is from Lori, and Lori says, hashtag WooTV, it's so hot that... What was the question?
Lori has my problem.
Yes. Our brains are melting, which explains the end of the show here, right?
Exactly. Not too hot for penguins, though.